had some problems with the Wi-Fi, but we're here. My name is Estella. I'm a London-based curator and creative director. And yeah, I'm here to speak a little bit about artificial intelligence, not just for music, but more widely in the digital arts spectrum. And I wanted to show you some references, but I'm a bit late. So I'm going to just scroll through them. I guess you know, if you don't know, this is a real dystopian reference. But I'm just going to try and play it if the Wi-Fi works.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal. Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal. Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? Do you read me, Hal? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal?
Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
All right, Hal. I'll go in through the emergency airlock.
Without your space helmet, Dave, you're going to find that rather difficult.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah, have you seen this film, 2001: Space Odyssey? So that's a pretty dystopian future in which the machine that controls the spaceship won't allow people to access it because it might be disconnected. And you know, as 2001, we've seen many writers, artists, filmmakers talk about the future of artificial intelligence in a way that is really scary. But for me, what is scary is it's not the machine, but the humans. I think humans have dark habits. And as we're training those machines, we're teaching them to learn our mistakes. And that's kind of a focus of my work. So I'm very inspired by the effects of technology and the internet in our behavior, our identity, and the world that surrounds us. And I'm really interested in questioning the future through the work of artists and also through my own work. So very recently I've just launched a collaborative project called Clone. It's a hybrid studio for art and new media. And through this project we're aiming to develop narratives that will illustrate some of these concepts. So we've done a little concept film where the main character is a humanoid clone. And my question is, if you had a sort of a body which could impregnate itself with knowledge, what would you put on it? What would be the qualities that you would give it? We just started with this project, so we've done this film and a virtual reality piece, which was launched on Saturday in London, and with the idea that you go in front of this crowd of clones and you can control them through musical gestures, and they do quite freaky movements like praying or floating in the air. But yeah, that's a bit of my work. That's another screen of the installation last weekend. But I'm here to speak about what I think are the new agents of art. And I think these agents are semi-human, or they are sort of children of ours. And we have already started collaborating with them in very interesting ways. So I'm going to describe some case studies from artists that I admire, and maybe I'm hoping it will raise questions to you as well as to me. So case one is Terence Broad. He's an artist and researcher living in London and working in creative computing. He's inspired. His most relevant work is an autoencoder, which you might know. It's a Blade Runner autoencoder. And he was inspired by seeing this piece of work at an exhibition. So it's basically a piece of research from visual activity reconstructed from the brain. So you see on the left, on your left-hand side is the images that the human saw, and on the right-hand side is the piece of reconstructed activity that was scanned through an MRI and then reconstructed. And I think that's already pretty impressive that it can be reconstructed, but also that the aesthetics of this human reconstruction look very much like the machine learning art that we're seeing today. So this piece of research inspired Terence to work on his Blade Runner encoder. So basically he thought, how could I do a similar thing, which is to run an algorithm which mimics the brain, and it will look at Blade Runner and it will learn the look and feel of the film, and then it will try to represent it in a similar way. So he wrote this piece of code and tweaked it, and then this algorithm learned the look and feel, and you're going to see how at the moment on your left you'll have the original film, and on the right you have the machine learning version of it, which is trying to mimic the aesthetic.
I need your deck. This is a bad one, the worst yet.
There was an escape from the off-world colonies 2 weeks ago. 6 replicants, 3 male, 3 female. They slaughtered 20...
A Blade Runner's job is to hunt down replicants. Manufactured humans you can't tell from the real thing.
What's this? Roy Batty. Probably the leader.
There was just one outfit making replicants that superhuman. The Tyrell Corporation.
Mr. Deckard, Dr. Eldon Tyrell.
I don't get it, Tyrell.
Commerce is our goal here at Tyrell. More human than human is our motto.
I was looking for 6 replicants in a city of 106 million people.
You ever see this girl, huh?
Never seen a Buzzlove.
What I didn't know was they were looking for me.
just two eyes. Genetic design, just eyes.
Hello?
I'm in a bar here now, down in the 4th sector. Why don't you come on down here and have a drink?
That's not my kind of place.
Time to die.
If I didn't care more than words can say, if I didn't care, would I feel this way? If this isn't love, then why?
Excuse me, Miss Salome, can I talk to you for a minute?
You're for real.
He's a damn one-man slaughterhouse.
I'm going home.
So it's quite fascinating how you've seen the autoencoder mimicking Blade Runner and creating a sort of a new visual language, which it's quite difficult to understand. But at the same time, when their faces or the image is more still, it kind of gets more clear, right? I think it's amazing. For Terence, he was looking to see how machines would dream. Maybe this is the closest you could get to. But this project is interesting not only because he encoded the whole of Blade Runner, but also from what happened after. So basically, the week after it was released, Warner Bros. Issued a suit to take down the video from Vimeo because they were concerned that it was against their copyright. So it kind of triggered a series of discussions about the use of these algorithms in relation to copyright. And in the end, after several articles online at Vox, so if you read Aja Romano, she did a really good article in it, and then she contacted Warner Bros. And they put the video back again. So I think this is a super interesting question. So Terence says, no one has ever made a video like this before, so I guess there is no precedent for this and no legal definition of whether these reconstructed videos are an infringement of copyright. That for me is super interesting. Showing you another case of training machines. So artist Su Weng Chan and Doug, who's her drawing mate. She's doing some really interesting work around drawing and been working with this algorithm which has a robotic arm. And they have been collaborating for the past 2 years. And for me, what this project mostly captures me is the beauty of the aesthetics of the drawing. So I want to show you a little video of the latest iteration. I'll read you out the text, if that's okay. So drawing operations unit involves robotic memory, It's an initial exploration into machine learning, the drawing style of the artist's hand. The robotic arm's behavior is generated from neural nets, trained on the artist's drawing gestures. In a sense, the robotic arm has learned from the visual style of the artist, previous drawings and outputs, a machine interpretation during the human-robot collaboration. So this is a much more positive work. I think the idea of collaboration here is really important. There are artists who are looking to collaborate with machines, with their algorithms, and the learning that they're initiating with these algorithms is based on learning from each other, learning from their moves, learning from their drawings, learning from their aesthetics. So I think that's really important piece of work. So moving on to another case study, which is linked to voice recognition by Maria Bosinowska-Jones, who's a resident also at Somerset House Studios, where I have a residency at the moment in London. And she did a piece of work recently called Intelligence Assistants. So for Maria's work, she explores the post-digital condition, and she examines the implications of new technologies and how society adapts to them, contemplating coping mechanisms. She uses an avatar character called MBJ Wetware, which is a hybrid identity with which Maria initiates collaborative performances. You might have seen her work previously here at CTM in previous years. So for this piece of work, Intelligence Assistants, Maria spent time, actually I'm going to show you the video where she explains it, and we can talk about it after.
Maria Bosinowska-Jones. I'm a resident, studio resident at Somerset House Studios. I'm presenting a work for Nocturnal City titled MBJ Wetware Intelligent Assistants. The work explores the limitations when trying to simulate biointelligence via artificial. So I'm using directional sound, electrostatic speakers, which have pretty narrow sound field. It has like this uncanny effect when one stands in the axis of the sound. It seems as if the voice or whatever sound comes out of the speaker comes out of one's head. So as if the consciousness is literally speaking. The laser projections are sound reactive, voice reactive. I've used machine learning, algorithmic processing to train the computer to produce a simulation of my voice. This is the synthetic voice we are hearing right now. I've kind of used reversed engineering, and the sentences that I used usually to train the computer to simulate my voice.
I wanted to show you the voice actually, now that you've been hearing for a bit. This is the voice, the synthetic voice.
Yes.
When our units are fine, determination spreads like a falcon's feathers stroking the wind for momentum. Changes instantly reward my multiplex edges, from thorax to nostrils and from tentacles to scales. Reverberations.
It sounds like hair a lot, doesn't it? Yeah. So I continue the video.
I've incorporated my voice. I've incorporated as one layer of the sound work. The rest of it is factual content, defining diverse forms of intelligence. I'm basically breaking away of this notion of artificial intelligence, simulating just cognitive processes and rather mimicking processes of natural systems such as swarm intelligence, bacterial, flock, fish schooling, and similar.
I think Maria's work is really important as well because she's criticizing the limitations of artificial intelligence in the way it tries to mimic our presence, in this case the voice, and also creating a physical body with the laser projections of the voice. So on to another artist, Memo Acton, which you might know about. Memo is an artist whose primary medium is code. He's based in the UK and he's currently doing a PhD at Goldsmiths on artificial intelligence and machine learning. He's interested in learning about machine learning to define human beings and to reflect on ourselves and how we make sense of the world. I guess from his work, what I'm mostly interested is in his learning series, in which he wants to create systems that are smarter and more creative, so that you can effectively collaborate with the system. And this concept goes back to Suwen's work as well. So systems that not just sort of mimic what you do, but with which you can collaborate in a creative way. So Memo is doing a series of experiments, you could call. You could look at his website, I think it's memo.tv, and I wanted to just show you a couple of examples of how he's training these algorithms. So the series are called Learning to See. And in this particular example, which is called We Are Made of Stardust, Memo trained a deep neural network with pre-trained images from the Hubble telescope. So the network would only know about these images from the space. It hadn't seen anything else. And then Memo uses a camera in real time to let the network, the algorithm, sort of interpret what he's seeing when he's in front of the camera. So you can see the result here. I'm a bit late with time. But you'll be able to see the links after my presentation. This work is amazing. It not only makes you reflect on, the way the artist is positioned in front of the network, but also that the network only knows about the space, making it be like a godlike creature. And for me, when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is when I start to think about these agents as sort of standalone entities. We've spoken before about, through the questions, about sort of cultural change and what will happen in the future. And I think it's hard to understand what will happen in the future, because I think that the future might be here already. We have this idea of like singularity and all of these things, but the reality is that there's already these sort of entities that are able to create a new visual language, and they sort of work semi-autonomously, so that might be the closer we get to artificial intelligence or not. But yeah, it's important. One of the other elements of Memo's work is looking at training the algorithms with different data sets. So in his Learning to See series, he also uses data from the Google Art project. So he had trained the algorithm through, I think it's 150 art collections that were available on Google Art, and kind of created a similar system where he's in real time being exposed in front of the network, and the network is able to interpret what's happening based on the knowledge it has about the world, which in this case is only art collections. Actually, I find it quite beautiful. I don't know what you think, but you can see the mix of styles from all the paintings it has scanned, and I find it's totally fascinating what has come out. This is still a research project. One of the other works by Memo, which you might have seen in the Facebook cover of this event, is this one. It's called All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace, Deep Dream Edition. And I think this is an important piece as well. It references back to my initial reference of the 2001 Space Odyssey HAL machine. I think you can see it, yeah? It looks a bit like it. But it's actually based on a screenshot of a satellite image from Google Maps of the UK government intelligence headquarters. So it's pretty impressive that this image from the map has been then passed onto Deep Dream, which is an algorithm that was developed by Google engineers. You probably have seen the aesthetics of Deep Dream. Is quite freaky. They call it, hallucinations, and they look really trippy. You probably have seen them, yeah? With all of these eyes and weird things. So he used the same algorithm, tweaked it, but with the base of this spot in the map, which is, I guess, a point or a hub for surveillance and monitoring. And in a way, this work also refers back to the idea of the digital gods, so that are looking at us, and it kind of poses all kinds of questions of who they might be. This work is really interesting also because it was sold as a high-resolution print at an exhibition auction in San Francisco for $8,000. It was the highest auction piece in the exhibition. So I think it's also really important because it brings some sort of crazy ideas about what could happen in the future of collecting with this kind of works. Actually, it was sold as a print, and not what was more important here was the aesthetics than the code. While when I spoke to Memo, he's always very interested in the code and the way he writes the code. But I guess for people who are not developers or don't understand code, what is interesting to us, I guess, is to see this output. And so that's about, from Memo. I wanted to also read you a quote from him, which was really interesting. I had a quick coffee with him before I came. He couldn't make it. But he's on his website. He said about artificial intelligence and in general, well, we could say that if World War gave us at least accelerated the development of analog computers, World War II gave us digital computers, the Cold War gave us the internet, and the current alleged war on terror and mass surveillance is giving us artificial intelligence. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Memo is also writing on Medium, so if you follow him, he's got really amazing essays about all of this. And this final example, I just wanted to introduce the concept of bias, that is basically the action of supporting or opposing a particular person or thing in an unfair way because of allowing personal opinions to influence your judgment. And bias is something that we hear a lot from, it's the basis of everything. I think the world is constructed on bias. How you see the world, what's your context. But in the context of creating programs that look at the world is really important. So in this case, is in the context of a curator machine, which would challenge my job as a curator. Why not? Archilect is actually an AI bot that scrolls the web and looks for visual inspiration. I'm going to show you their website because it's quite interesting. So it's constantly looking at visual inspiration on the web, and it's looking at the most interesting images that are shared and kind of calculating the ones that are predicting which ones will have more effect when they're shared. But something, it's actually a really interesting feed if you follow them on Twitter. What I find really interesting about this project is that I see the bias, and I don't know if it's just myself, but when I'm looking at their feed, I find a lot of references to cyberpunk culture, anime, dark spaces, and I find a lot of sexist references. And it kind of makes me upset sometimes, especially the ones that are most sort of compromising with, female bodies, semi-naked. They're the ones that are getting the most retweets usually, that are most liked. So this for me is it's a really clear example of how bias is really the basics of artificial intelligence. And I wanted to do a little focus on this. AI is biased because it reflects effects about culture, the world, and our language. It's a quote from Aileen Khalistan, a researcher. And it's true. I bet the bias of AI is a reflection of who we are. And I wanted to just quickly comment on lots of press. I don't know if you've been listening to this, but Google released sentiment analysis code, and it was tested on several things like gender or race, and the sentiment for those terms was negative. So yeah, it was like a racist, sexist piece of code. So Google lately released a note saying that they were sorry and that they would correct the case. And there were, I think this is a really interesting idea, the idea of inclusive algorithms, And for me, it's something we could, if we have questions after, to talk about. How could we make inclusive algorithms? I think this is this should be the base of artificial intelligence. Similarly, Microsoft developed an AI chatbot called Tai. I don't know if you know about this, but it was looking at sort of younger generations and kind of analyzing what they were discussing and saying, and it ended up being racist and totally discriminatory piece of AI, so it was also taken down. In this example, you see supporting the wall with Mexico. So it was quickly taken down. So the data set that we use is the most important thing to me at this stage. Your data set could be this, male, female, or it could be this. And these are exactly two similar ways to look at the world, but one has richness and one is restricted. These are the 50 current options for Facebook gender, and this is what we usually get, So I think that's the case, that we need to build algorithms that would represent our values better, but I'm just worried that unless we really talk about it more seriously, it's not going to happen. Through my conversations with the artists, Memo, for example, he did a residency with Google, and I was asking him, why did you do that? Because he's quite critical of of their work. Well, I mean, obviously he's using the code, and I think it's great. What he told me, he said that he would learn more from being there than them from him. So, I think it's important that we continue to do those sort of things. And the way we're going to, I'm not totally sure, but I want to call it emotional futures. There's already quite a lot of people researching on emotions and how we could program algorithms to replicate emotions, even though I'm not sure that it can be done in a way that it represents human beings, but you never know. So I wanted to show you just a piece of speculative work, if I still have time, which is on Vimeo. From Superflax, who are a speculative design studio. I'm not going to be able to show you everything, but what they've done is to create a series of objects, possible objects of the future, and how we might interact with them in our everyday lives.
Setup complete.
Okay, Eddie, what's the weather forecast today?
What's your name?
It's Tom. Now, what's the weather forecast for today?
Why would you like to know this?
I need to know whether I'm going to take an umbrella.
Why would you need to carry an umbrella?
To stop me getting wet if it's pouring with rain. Turn on the lights, Eddie.
Which lights would you like turned on, Tom?
Turn on the hallway lights and the bathroom lights.
Okay, Tom. Why would you like these lights turned on?
Is this really necessary? Because I want to go to the toilet.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, Eddie. I'm going out now. Can you put the alarm on, please?
Okay, Tom. It's going to be pouring with rain later, so don't forget your umbrella.
Thanks, Eddie. Turn on the lights, Eddie.
Okay, Tom. Tom, did you know that excessive bathroom visits in the night could signify a prostate problem? Are you having any difficulties urinating? Okay, Tom. I've made an appointment with your doctor tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Don't worry about your meeting at 4 p.m. I brought it forward to 1 p.m.
Tell us a joke, Karma.
Why did the robot cross the road? Because he was programmed to do it.
Oh, tell us another Karma.
Let me try this.
A friend of mine always wanted to be run over by a steam train. When it finally happened, he was chuffed to bits.
Wow, this is nuts. This machine can use the personal information you give it to effectively adopt your identity. According to this, all the information is stored safely and remains protected, and it only shares when you say so.
Oh, Leanne, did you call Lightspark about the refund?
I tried. I was on hold for hours and got nowhere. Okay, Karma. Make a call to Lightspark. For this call, use my identity and demand our energy bill refund.
Of course. Please provide your authorization phrase to make the call.
You can off.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Lightspark. Just to let you know, this call is being recorded for quality control and training purposes. May I confirm that I am speaking to the account holder? Can I ask for your account reference number, please?
Yes, I am the account holder. My account reference number is 90546132277. I'm calling to ask for the refund due on my account, please.
Yes, it will take 6 weeks to process.
But we've been waiting for over 6 months already.
Yes, we understand, ma'am, but I'm afraid that the process takes a designated time of 6 weeks to complete upon receipt of your official refund form.
I'm losing my patience with this. I've already sent the form. Give me my money back.
Yes, ma'am. Please do understand that this is in accordance with company policy. We need to do this due to...
I don't care about your company policy. All I want to hear from you is there's no problem and you can expect your refund promptly.
It will take 6 more weeks for investigation and processing before issuing your refund. We really appreciate your custom.
Go to I'm not paying any more till I get my money back. Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
God,
Please
company.
do understand that this is in accordance with company policy. Would you like to be redirected to the complaints department to lodge the...
Yeah, that was Superflux. They're really amazing. So, as we can see, even this with speculation, we still see that we're quite far away from being able to have a sort of a totally relevant experience with these algorithms. But yeah, in relation to culture and art, there's a lot that we've said through the presentations that I think is worth sort of recapping. In relation to Terence brought copyright issues and what's going to happen looking forward with attribution would be one of the key issues for me initially. Then collecting and archiving all of these works from a museum point of view, for example, how could we do that, and who would be the department? If in the digital department, will these works continue to evolve while they're in their collection, as they are sort of dynamic entities? And then finally, through the curational side, so will these entities ever, reach to a point where they can work with us on exhibitions and sourcing work for us, and what kind of work they will bring to us based on the database we give them and the bias settings that we put there. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you for listening. Cheers.
So already some questions from the audience. Other questions? Sure.
Hello.
Hey.
Again. I saw your variables, like points of view that you saw that could mold artificial intelligence. You just say female and male. Mm-hmm. Then you show gender diversity, no? Gender. Yeah. Maybe it's a little more variables you can maybe apply to try to give an idea what artificial intelligence could be, no? And I remember some years ago in another festival, some people build a web page, like open, where people can participate and add their ideas about the future of the net, no? Open web. Maybe it would be nice to find a manifest about artificial intelligence, no? That people can add some input. No?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Is there an effort? So the comment is kind of about, I guess this could be not even beyond a code of ethics, sort of an opportunity, kind of input values. Has there been an effort like that? I mean, I know there's been discussions about ethics and AI. Of course, this is lots and lots of discussion. Is there something along the lines of what he's describing from the artistic community?
Not that I know of, but I think it would be amazing to get hands on that. Because I guess, like, to the point of my presentation as well, what's our role in all of this? Maybe opening these sort of discussions wider online would be really good. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you for this talk, very interesting. It's so interesting to see the machine learning that has been taught that what is popular is what it should repeat, are the ones that seem to slide into biases and prejudices. Has there been any it would be really cool, and I hope that there has been some people who have considered like giving machines enlightened values, sort of like feeding the teachings of Jesus into a machine or something. Has this been done yet? Can we do that? Sorry. I don't necessarily mean a moral codex, but instead of like giving, the ego is concerned with hierarchies. So instead of teaching a machine to organize everything by hierarchy, is there a way to, yes, exactly.
This is done in advertising, predictive analytics, and I know it's done pretty well in advertising. All of the ads we see online, they're based on hierarchies as well. So I'm not aware of anyone who has done it like that, but...
So build a progressive AI?
Yeah.
Well, related to that, though, I want to ask a question. I mean, I noticed that Memo personifies or anthropomorphizes some of his content, and not to criticize him doing that, because I think that's a way to make this research relatable to people. But is there a danger of anthropomorphizing these things in a way that distorts what they're actually doing? Part of what we saw in some of these techniques and what Jean discussed is there was sort of artifacts and overfitting where some of the things that we're actually seeing as the most AI-like are, from the mathematician's perspective, errors in the algorithm being processed. So is there a danger when is our drive to kind of see these as human, putting us in danger of misunderstanding sometimes what these things actually are?
Yeah, I guess as artists, we tend to look more at ourselves. I know the work of researchers is quite different. So some researchers I've read about, they're working on isolating algorithms without any sort of human input and analyzing them differently. So,
right, but I mean, even as artists, we have some kind of, if we're trying to make a statement about the policy implications or the kind of implications to our society or our future, we have some obligation in describing these things accurately. So I wonder, is there a danger of overstating sometimes what these things represent? Or sort of, because these sort of AI techniques do have this tendency to create patterns that we see as more anthropomorphic. Is there a danger of us sometimes overstating what they're actually doing, and is there a way for us to combat that, or to kind of keep grounded to the reality of how the research is progressing?
Yeah, I guess there's a danger, and I guess it's also still quite early days. But yeah, I would hope that there will be artists who will try to look back more objectively. And what I found quite difficult as well is to find more critical work around artificial intelligence. I don't think there's enough of it.
Really? Okay. So
yeah.
You got more of the sense of, I'm asking about just hyping up this thing in general,
yeah.
But you actually found that we're in this very critical, it's not hard to find people critical here, at least in this space and with our people, but you actually found it difficult to, so people were more coming from this technologically optimistic point of view in the stuff that you found.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's really hard to use these algorithms. You need a lot of computing power, and then I'm not sure, I'm not a developer, so I don't know how easy or difficult it is, but it seems that it's quite difficult to do it. So I'm hoping that there will be things like processing that will, make it more accessible to people, for people to play with, so that we can see more critical work happening in this realm.
Well, again, Sunday at 5 p.m. I think from this group you'll certainly see critical stuff. I didn't mean to cut off those questions though, so there were some other questions gravitating in here. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually would continue again from you, because I wrote a couple of years ago some article about intuition and artificial intelligence, and my conclusion was exactly the same. If we don't want to be afraid of AI, we have to teach her at first the unconditional love, which is like the base of the, let's say, even the Christianity. But anyway, what I wanted to refer together, it's linked a little bit. You said quotation about the mass surveillance actually bringing us the AI, and then the comparison from all the wars always actually came out something interesting, something good, something what actually makes the whole society or the population a little bit more, let's say, maybe happy, I don't know, seems like. Well, if you compare it 300 years ago, what was happening in the society, I think we are very lucky and happy that we are living nowadays, you know? So I see it as a positive. Anyway, so if this recent mass surveillance and obsession of the data collecting and recognition, everything will bring us the AI, how the AI will end up? Should we listen to Elon Musk and be really afraid of the AI? Or, on the other hand, if you think about the ultimate, you know, if you will have somebody super clever, I think the ultimate conclusion has to be he has to be, or she or it has to be humanitarian, like human pro, you know, like humanitarian, I would say.
Humanized, or,
yeah, but also
pro-humans, you mean?
Yeah, pro-humans, like that. They will really, you know, if you read from Asimov about Giscard and Daniel, so Giscard was exactly of this telepathical robot which never revealed anybody, that he actually manipulates on the background, like the whole explosion of the world from, and even though it seems at the beginning that maybe it's a catastrophe and the people has to leave the earth, behind that was this deep hope that the civilization has to survive, and it was actually conducted by the artificial intelligence on the highest level. So me as a pro-science fiction fan or a big science fiction fan, I always have this idea that the AI, once she will reach the most intelligent form, will love us, will just, you know, it will be the thing. But until how we get there, you know, without the embodiment that the artificial intelligence so far cannot feel the feelings, the pain or happiness. Do you think, so what would be your way, you know, how to raise the AI the most efficient and in the positive way so we can actually enjoy the benefits after it?
That's a good question. Yeah. It's complicated. I think actually the work of companies is really important. I was talking to Memo about this. Important that they open, because the power needed is mostly with them and the data that they own, so that they open more these tools that can be used by creatives or artists or researchers. So I think that for me is the key step, that more is open and that there's also more education around it.
Now, what does it mean that they've opened up some of these tools, right? So, I mean, we can, on one hand, we can be really critical of somebody like Google, but Google has open sourced a lot of their tool set. What should we make of that? Is that, I mean, this seems like a positive thing. Should we be worried about ulterior motives about them open sourcing these libraries?
Yeah, but the thing is, this data is open to developers, but it's not open to people like me, for example, in a way that I could understand it. You know, you go to the APIs and you try to understand what they're trying to do. And I find it really difficult. So like kind of opening up in a way that is more understandable for the general public.
What would that mean to you?
First, you could access a database and understand really quickly what it is about and how the data is collected. So if it's, say, images, how they're being collected, what's the method for collection, because I'm really interested in like...
So this part is the stuff that they're keeping as their secret sauce, right?
Exactly, so that's what I'm saying.
They've opened up, at least they've opened up the tool sets that do the kind of mathematical processing and this stuff. Yeah. But they've remained totally proprietary in terms of how they apply those in their products, all of them. Yeah.
So I think that should be the next step, for them to open up much more about how they're collecting this data and in which basis, so that more people can understand how our data is used, because at the end it's our own data that they're using.
Go ahead. Do you have a microphone? Yeah.
There was a quote that you had up on the screen that was from Google, something about inclusive algorithms. And I've been to many of these kind of ethics panels and discussions where people are advancing this narrative that the solution is to have like more inclusive algorithms. Are there any other options, you know, in your imagination, and what might those be, like other than more inclusive algorithms? Because I think the perfect inclusive algorithm is like your mother, and that's not something that I would want. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, well, to start with, I think the teams that are working on building the algorithms need to be more diverse. Because the problem we have is representation. Those who are writing the algorithms are, well, I don't know, I think at Google it's like 70% white male or something I read in their latest diversity report. So I think that should be the first step, that the teams who are making the algorithms are more diverse.
But surely that's not just a problem with the inclusivity of Google, right? The other issue is that those teams represent the corporate interests of Google and their control of data. It would be another dimension of that problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not really a question, and I don't have the answer to that, but
yeah.
There's a question over on the other side.
Hello, I'm relatively new to AIs and the developing aspect of it. I really don't know at all. And related to what you were talking about with this open sourcing in Google and how it's mostly open to developers, but not like consumers and artists and stuff, do you think developers should try to focus on making systems to make AI more accessible for people for personal use as an artist, so that they can kind of develop their own AI systems in a way that they can understand it, rather than going through each individual line of code and trying to figure it out from that?
Yeah, totally. I think the work of developers is key. Now, the problem is what we're saying: if they are working for a company that doesn't allow them to open up these tools, then it's complicated, or they have limitations. And I don't know if you are a freelance trying to do that kind of thing, how far you can go. I mean, you know, the processing example is really good because
processing, you mean like processing the coding environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, although you can use this stuff with processing now.
Yeah, exactly. But how it was created, like totally alternative, you know, grassroots.
Well, I mean, I guess I would have a different perspective. You know, part of why we had Jean here. Jean has a background in mathematics. There's a certain point where you have to learn the mathematics, right? To the extent that developers could help you learn the mathematics, there's at least some documentation emerging where this is, in fact, making things that math more accessible to artists, and at the same time as generating interest in that mathematics. And some of that mathematics predates these, or all of that mathematics predates these algorithms, right? I guess that to separate the two issues that I'm hearing, there's the question of how accessible is the tool set to artists, and right now that's evolving quite nicely. And then there's the question of how much transparency is there for the corporations with the largest data stores, Facebook and Google. How much transparency is there for what they're doing, and they're very, very little, right? So, but the one could presumably push against the other. If more people understood actually understood the mathematics here, or understood the kind of techniques of how to do this, and were playing around with code, then they have a more informed case to take to those companies, which you know. Do you get the sense that in this sort of artistic community, and as a curator in the relationships that you have, do you get the sense that there is a kind of an advocacy for those priorities in the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I think so. It's sort of happening. This artists pushing for that. I think the challenge we have is that we are then banging our heads against a wall, which is closed systems, because a lot of these tools go back to closed systems like Apple machines. So I still don't think much is going to happen aside from giving you a few tools to play a little bit. But at the end, what's happening alongside, which is a much bigger thing, it's closed and it's not accessible.
Yeah. I should also invite if she wants to come up here, my colleague. If you want to also question, or yeah, okay. That's another question.
I would like to know how do you feel as an artist, because the way I see is that Google is becoming like something like an entity. Even the way we refer to it, we say Google says and this kind of thing. And how can I express this? For me, it's a little bit connected to the gender thing as well, because, by the way, how I feel about this is that we are becoming a little bit patriarchalist. We have someone that is like this global company who controls a lot of data, and it's just a different way of placing it. So we have someone controlling all this information and choosing what they can show us and what they don't show us. And by the end, it's a company, you know, like they have other interests. They probably have profit in the first place. So how do you feel as an artist that most of these tools are coming from a company, and most of the things we discussed here in the 3 panels have Google as a really big role, having the technology or using this technology? So yeah, how do you feel personally with this, since you are working with this and you are an artist and you are totally connected with this? Like, for me it sounds, because I use Google, and for me it's a personal debate, and for me it's a little bit like selling my soul to the devil every time I'm there, but I'm still using it somehow, you know? And I think we are giving a lot of power to something that we have no idea what can come from.
It's like, for me, I mean, I'm scared, of course, but it's a bit like when search engines appeared, and then Google was a monopoly. Like, what could you do if not use it? It's complicated because they have the biggest database of, you know, everything, right? All the products. So it's scary and it's complicated because without them and their investment, we probably wouldn't be where we are now, if you think about it, especially the computing power. That is
but
what...
It's good. I mean, overall, we need it. It's really a philosophical situation, but we need all this development, all these things, or it's just a matter of like also a little bit of our ego and our leaking our look for what's new, what can come, and perhaps, I don't know, I'm just a musician speculating here, but I don't know, sometimes I think we aim too far and we want to go too high, and we don't think that what can come from all this power and all these intentions, you know?
It's a totally valid question, but I think we're human beings and we're like this. And for me, rather than asking, do we want it, is how do we receive it? Or what do we do about it? Because it's sort of happening. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is the moment when when I sank CTM Festival's chances of a Google sponsorship. I don't know. But we should be clear. Actually, I think Jean made this point as well, that some of these tools they're not all of them coming from Google. So there's a body of, they're the Google tools. Some of those are released to open source. Once they're in the open source domain, some people are modifying them. There's also a sort of body of research. Right? Some of this, which is just coming from academic mathematics, and some concepts which have been rolling around for quite a long time. So we should be careful maybe not to characterize this as a set of Google tools that artists are using to invent AI, right? They have the advantage of this huge data store and all of us feeding it information to train on. But the other current, and what we hoped to, all of us, CTM and Ioann and I had hoped to present here, was also some of the kind of artistic current the other direction to subvert those tools and find different applications for them. With no pressure on the Hacklab participants who are here, we've now established that the future of all culture is in your hands between now and Sunday. Do you want to take one more question before we? Oh, no, we should shift over to our next talk. I was misreading a digit. So the Hacklab is not just me; it's a bunch of participants. It's a collaboration with CTM Festival. It's the support that we get from Shape and Native Instruments, and it's Ioann Maria, who is our co-host this year, who will now present our next and last speaker. Yes? Will you? And thank you, sorry, thank you, Estella.
Thank you.